admired for their
honor,
cherished for their
loyalty,
revered for their
respect.
Ring of destiny.
Hello everybody, this is Kismet. We're going to do something different this time. We're going to have a Star Wars The Old Republic Primer number 1, The Jedi. I'd like to thank Varwe who wrote up this guide. Note, we're not in beta. This is just a general overview, and this guide is totally subject to change. What I'm going to do now is magically transport us into Star Wars The Old Republic. In this primer, we're going to take a look at the Jedi classes. There are 2 primary classes for the Jedi Knight and the Jedi Consular. When you hit level 10, you'll need to pick an advanced class. The Jedi Consular can go Jedi Sage or Jedi Shadow. Jedi Knights can go Jedi Sentinel or Jedi Guardian. So really there's 4 classes to choose from, and each of those classes have 3 skill trees, which are basically ways you can specialize your Jedi for a certain role. Now remember, all of these trees can change, but this is a great overview to get you started. The game developers have said to specialize in a certain tree. You could spread your points between all 3 trees, but that will gimp your character. Do not do this. Alright, let's talk about each class. The first advanced class we're going to talk about is Jedi Knight to Jedi Sentinel. Jedi Sentinels are the premier DPS advanced class for Jedi. They wear medium armor, wield lightsabers in each hand, making them the only dual-wielding Jedi class in the game. Let's talk about the specializations of the Jedi Sentinel. First, we're going to talk about the combat tree. The combat tree is basically about burst DPS. A Sentinel in the combat tree will have the highest burst DPS of any Jedi in the game. The mechanics of the class are based on building up focus and unleashing your powerful attacks. Next, we'll talk about the Jedi Sentinel's Watchman Tree. In the Watchman Tree, you sacrifice a bit of burst DPS for the sake of sustained DPS over a longer period. Next is the Jedi Sentinel's Focus Tree. Now, the Focus Tree is shared between the Sentinels and the Guardians. It's generally seen as the tree of choice for those who wish to build specifically for player versus player. Now, let's talk about the other advanced class, the Jedi Guardian. The first Jedi Guardian tree is the Defense Tree. This is your classic MMO heavy tank. He's got heavy armor, great defenses, but not much DPS. Next is the Jedi Guardian's Vigilance Tree. The Vigilance Tree is a DPS tree for Guardians. While the Jedi Guardian overall is not a DPS class, every class in the game has access to at least one DPS tree. The last tree for the Jedi Guardian is the Focus Tree. Now the Focus Tree is the one the Guardian shares with the Sentinel. And again, this is the preferred player versus player crowd control tree. Next, we're going to talk about the Jedi Consular. The first advanced class is the Jedi Sage. The Jedi Sage is the closest thing to a pure caster class. They wear light armor, wield one lightsaber, and have very few melee attacks. Let's talk about the Jedi Sage's trees. The first tree is the Seer Tree. This is your classic MMO healer. A Seer Spec Sage will be the only true healing class among the Jedi. The next Jedi Sage tree is the Telekinetics Tree. This is your classic MMO spellcasting nuker. And the last tree for the Jedi Sage is called the Balance Tree. The Balance Tree is shared between the Jedi Sages and Jedi Shadows. It is generally considered to be the best player versus player tree. Now let's talk about the other advanced class for the Jedi Consular, the Jedi Shadow. The Jedi Shadow seems to be an enigma among the Jedi classes. It's the hardest to pin down and perhaps full of the most surprises. Shadows wear only light armor, except for they wield a double-bladed lightsaber, sometimes called the Saber Staff. Let's talk about the Jedi Shadow's trees. First, there's the Infiltration Tree. The Infiltration Tree is a stealth-based DPS tree. The Jedi Shadows that are spec'd in Infiltration would be the closest to the classic MMO Rogue class. Next is the Jedi Shadow's Kinetic Combat Tree. Now this is pretty amazing. Speccing in this tree for the Jedi Shadow would turn you into a fully fledged primary tank. And by tank, we're not talking about evasion tanks, but true armor mitigation tanks. Now, we can wonder how that can be with a light armor class, but I guess we'll just have to wait for a release to see. And the last one for the Jedi Shadow is the Balance Spec. Now, this tree again is shared between the Shadows and the Sages, and is primarily for player versus player. If you're looking to play a Jedi who is strong in both melee and casting, this could be the option for you. Now, as we've said before, all this is subject to change. For those of you who have not yet joined us in Star Wars The Old Republic, feel free to look us up under the Guild area, under Ring of Destiny. Thank you for joining us for this primer on the Jedi in Star Wars The Old Republic. On behalf of Varwe and myself, Kismet, we hope to see you soon, and may the Force be with you.